Hi, welcome to Chapter 3, Understanding Your Audience. Our textbook is Business Communication for Success, an open source textbook. Pull out your guided lecture notes, and now's the time to start taking notes because that will help your recall later. All right, so what are the differences between attitudes, beliefs, and values? So you should probably have read your book already, or you may have some preconceptions. Please jot these down, and that's actually going to help you make connections between what we're going to talk about in a few minutes. Also ask yourself, what is a self-concept? Jot it down. Okay. A self-concept is how we perceive ourselves. It's your sense of who you are, what you believe you can do, and your identity. Now, your self-concept might not actually match the facts about who you are. Your self-confidence concept is your self-image plus your self-esteem. At least that's what the textbook says. Self-concepts are partly subjective. The objective aspects are based on facts, such as your height, your hair color, your age, and your occupation. Now, my age is 45, but if I was describing myself and said I am old, that would be subjective, not objective, right? The subjective aspects are based on my opinions or evaluations, my honesty, my sense of humor, my intelligence, my talent, and my sense of how valuable and important and what different facts mean about me. If I could say I'm 46 years young or I'm 46 years old, oh my gosh, I'm old. So that's part of your attitude towards it. So how we perceive ourselves is our looking glass self. Now, everyone has different perceptions of us. Our mom or dad might think we're an angel or a little demon sent to torment them. But how we see ourselves is that looking glass self. What does it have to do with business communication? Well, we play roles in self-fulfilling prophecy, particularly when we interact with other people and we communicate with them. So that saying, if you believe you can achieve, well, if you decide you're going to be successful or read the signs, the fortune cookie, that you will be successful and believe it, it is often easier to achieve. But if you decide that you cannot do it, then it is also more difficult. So self-fulfilling prophecies can reinforce our self-concept. Think about this for yourself. We have expectations based on how we perceive ourselves and others, and we communicate those expectations with cues. How we dress, how we walk, how we hold our head, how we interact in a conversation, the tone we use, the word choice we use. So those are the specific ways that our expectations prompt us to act. People respond to those cues by adjusting their own behavior to match expectations. So if you don't think much of yourself and you don't think you're very attractive, often other people will not think you're attractive either. And so then you end up getting the outcome you expect. You are given the attention or the results from the cues that you yourself established in the beginning. So how do self-fulfilling prophecies impact the workplace? And how do they play a role in stereotyping? Well, they can. Expectations influence outcomes. So if you are sitting in a classroom and you decide, I am an excellent student who takes good notes and I want to pay attention to the instructor because of that person, you might sit in the front row and you might have your eyes on the teacher and be riveted. And so that will impact how much you get out of the course and how well you do on the test. So there was an experiment in 1968 in which all of the children in elementary class were given a test. And they told the teacher that some of the children were unusually clever. You got an excellent batch this year. These kids are great if you can just tap into that. Now, the children were actually average intelligence. But they tested the class again at the end of the school year, and the children who were singled out as being unusually clever improved their scores far more than the other children. So even though the teacher was the one who was giving these cues to the children that they were brighter, that they could do more, that higher expectations were upon them, the children took from that this idea and made it part of their looking glass self, their self-concept, that they were capable of more, and it actually affected their learning. So meaning results from our perception and the significance we attach to things. Perception is the process of making meaning. From experience, we select, organize, and interpret people, actions, events, etc. And then we select, we organize, and interpret. So what do we notice? We notice the unusual or unexpected, we notice repetition, and we notice intensity. So think about advertising. Do you have something in mind? Have you thought of repetition, an ad that you see a lot, maybe in a lot of different formats, so you constantly, associate the gecko with Geico? Which is also unusual and unexpected. What other factors influence perception? The acuity of our senses. So if you can't hear very well, you're not going to hear finer levels of nuance. Selection is part of, we have selective exposure, we have selective attention, and we have selective retention. So exposure is what you pay attention to. So out of all the things that you're exposed to, what do you pay attention to? Attention is what you focus on, the stimulus out of all the things that you pay attention to. And then retention is what you choose to remember. So, this is a filter. Picture that cone-shaped filter, and we get down to retention, and it's a small amount of what you were actually exposed to and you paid attention to. So organization includes schemas. They are mental structures. We use them to group together related information and take in new information. And your textbook calls schemas schemes, okay? Somewhat like skeins of yarn, but I pulled all this together. So schemas are these structures, mental structures that you use to sort and group related things. The types of schemas include mental constructs that emphasize people's appearance. So someone walks in the room and you think, oh, this is the type of person they are. Role constructs emphasize that person's role or position. Oh, he's a boss. Interaction constructs are the people's behavior. And then psychological constructs are their thoughts or feelings. Now, many people pay attention to or organize by different schemas. We've all met someone who judges everyone by appearance, right? So that person operates on physical constructs a great deal. So interpretation. Use personal experience, knowledge of what, and closeness of your relationship. Can you fill in that blank? How we perceive others. Schemas influence what we pay attention to. We learn information quickly if it fits into our schema, but we are cognitive misers. That means miserly is where you don't want to add, we don't want to do anything extra. So people tend not to build lots of new schemas. We want to fit information into our existing schemas. Well, that leads to some problems. Now, let's say a young child has met a horse, and then this child sees a cow, and she calls it a horse. So the child has a horse schema that includes 4 legs, farm, hare, pasture, grass, mammal, barn. All these things fit both horses and cows. But if horses and cows are different, and this is the thing that's happening in the child's brain, then she has to create a new cow schema and modify the horse schema. Suddenly, this child's world has literally expanded as far as her brain. Her brain literally changes in response to this information. So she has a new cow schema: moo, moo, cream, grass, farm, eat hay, milk. So these are the thoughts that she has around this cow. And now there must be a new horse schema. How are cows different from horses is included in the schema. Instead of moo, we have neigh. We have ride and ranch and saddle, race, hoof, tail, because that tail is different, right? Mane. So there's all sorts of things that are different here than there were than there were in the previous schema. So the new horse schema is a little different. We have types of schemas, right? You have person schemas, social schemas, self schemas, and event schemas, what the expectations are, what happens there. So schemas, in summary, are part of our cognitive framework. That, once again, your textbook calls them schemes or schemes. They allow us to take shortcuts in selecting, sorting, and retaining information. We tend to focus on things that confirm our pre-existing beliefs and ideas. Now, they contribute to stereotypes, as you can tell. If you have a physical schema, well, someone walks in who's blonde, and you put that person in the blondes are bubblehead schema. And because we're cognitive misers, it affects memory. It makes it difficult to retain new or contradictory information. Remember, perception has 3 stages. There's selection, organization, and interpretation. And the stages are not linear. They don't go in a row. We select at the same time sometimes that we're interpreting, and then we organize. How we perceive others is based on a lot of influences: our cultures and co-cultures, stereotypes, primacy and recency effects, and perceptual sets. So a stereotype is an exaggerated or distorted generalization. Its relationship to prejudice and discrimination is that often members of one group will deny opportunities and rewards that are available to that group to other groups that fit a stereotype. Now, primacy and recency is based on better, higher recall at the beginning and at the end of anything. So that middle tends to be the place where we forget. So think about items presented first and last and how much better they're remembered than those in the middle. Knowing this, how do we structure messages to be more effective? There's a pretty clear answer there, right? The recall at the beginning is our strongest first impression. Recall at the end, if it comes last, we're going to remember it first. So when is the best time to interview? So if if there are 7 candidates, when's the best time to interview? The recency effect. The most recent impression we have of a person's communication is more powerful than earlier impressions. So if we saw somebody 2 weeks ago and then previously we'd seen them 2 years ago, the most recent impression is more powerful, right? So how does this affect employees' use of social media? That's a good question. Now we have a perceptual set. People's predisposition to perceive only what they want or expect to see, right? I have a little joke here. Oh, they still suspect nothing, day 33. So people see what they want to see many times, or they expect to see. Why is perception so important in business communication? That's a great question. Let's review. So come back to everything. Let's tie it all together. What are the differences between attitudes, beliefs, and values? What is a self-concept? What are the looking glass self and the self-fulfilling prophecy? What are the 3 stages of perception, and how do culture, stereotypes, primacy and recency, and perceptual sets impact perception?